Okay, in this video, we are going to upload a file to Salesforce, in this case an invoice, and then we're going to have AI convert that invoice unstructured data to Salesforce records, in other words, structured data. So I've gone ahead and I've already uploaded this image of an invoice. This could be scanned, take a picture with an iPhone, it could be a PDF, it could be an attachment, but basically a standard invoice. And that's been uploaded here. So the first thing, so I've also installed an agent here that's specialized in extraction. This is sitting next to some PII agents and other utilities. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test this agent's ability to just do discovery and understand the invoice. I might start with something like itemize the invoice items. Okay, so it's come back with 3 items. I'll come back to that. Something looks a little bit off. I might have to train that a little more. Let's see, does it understand things like invoice number? Yeah, looks good. Due date. Total amount. If there's any terms and conditions in there, I want to make sure I can see those. I want to make sure I can, through inference, get access to those through the agent. So yeah, it all looks good so far. Check that purchase order number. Yep, 2312. That looks good. Okay, so as a next step, so I've established that the unstructured data, the agent can talk to it. Now what I want to do is start the transformer process to Salesforce records. So I'm going to tell the agent, assume use of the invoice and invoice line standard objects, describe them for details. So what I'm doing is priming the agent's context or the memory. So this is kind of a form of programming, natural language programming. So it's called the metadata. It says, okay, I understand the invoice object in fields, the types, whether or not they're read-only, and confirm that it has an understanding of the invoice line object. Okay. So now what I want to do is test the agent's ability at this point to actually insert some records. So I'm going to say, how would you insert this invoice in invoice line records? Don't actually, if I can type, do any DML, just outline your approach. So I want to see how the AI reasons about this. It might come back, say I could do this pretty quickly in 1 or 2 steps. It might be 5 or 6 steps. But I want to start cementing those steps to make them a little more deterministic. If it's manifest or its plan is not perfect or what I'm expecting, I might have to go in and adjust its memory. Okay, so it looks reasonably good. It gave me 7 steps. It's going to extract some key information from both the parent object and the line records. That looks good. It's figured out the semantics of account and contact. It's, however, that's incorrect. It's assuming John Smith is an account. So making a mental note here, I'm going to have to fix its memory, prepare the DML payload. Looks like a good hierarchy here. We have a top level insert of an invoice. We have 3 line items. Again, another mental note, the sales tax is not in there. I'm expecting a fourth line item. Then it's going to execute. It's telling me the skill. It's going to call. It's going to do some verification, post validation. Okay. So couple things we need to fix. Instead of, I want it to be grounded in this sense of a supplier or vendor. So I'm going to say who is the supplier, vendor, or account. Okay, so now it's correctly saying East Repair Incorporated is the supplier, and it's inferring this would typically correspond to the account in Salesforce if you are tracking it. So I'm going to ask it, this is the live real-time question, is there a matching account for this supplier based on name field match. Okay, so it says no, there's no matching account. So here's where I start getting into the programming. I'm going to use the keywords remember that. So if I start any sentence with remember that, it knows that it goes into a system mode, and it knows to remember that as a system memory for future invoices. So I'm going to tell it to remember that. I could also say remember to match the invoice supplier to an account by name. If an account does not exist, then create a new account record for the vendor supplier. So this is doing a few things behind the scenes. It's adding this to its memory, and there's different types of memory. We'll do a lengthier video on that. And it's going back and saying, okay, in this scenario, okay, I understand. Here's how I would query. Here's how I do an evaluation. If needed, if on the invoice I don't actually find a match in account, I'm going to create an account using these rules. And I can elaborate. I could tell it, in addition to billing, use type vendor and remember any number of properties here. So something else I noticed is it gave us 3 line items, which technically is correct. I can see the 3 line items, but there's a sales tax, and so therefore, had I imported 3 line items, we would have had a discrepancy of $9.06 because it didn't itemize the sales tax. So I'm going to tell it, remember that additional charges like sales tax, shipping, and handling should be included in the line items to ensure the invoice total amount matches the file invoice total amount. And it should be able to figure out what that means. So it's going to go ahead, it's going to append another memory, another system rule, and it's going to rerun the scenario. Okay, so what I'm expecting is it should come back and say, okay, there should actually be 4 line items. And so it says, got it. I'm going to ensure that we match on additional charges like sales tax. From the invoice file, it found that. It's going to add sales tax as a line item. It's going to do the validation check to make sure the totals match. Here's how I would do the DML, data manipulation language. It's going to do an insert at the parent level, and then it's going to add 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, looks good. then it's going to do some post-processing validation, final steps. So that all looks pretty good. I think this agent is ready to go. I mean, what I'll do is probably just a final check. Simulate a full extraction of this invoice to Salesforce records, including account, invoice, and invoice line records. So I gave it a couple remember this, remember that kind of memory instructions. So that's basically programming. It's actually a lot of fun. It's a new style of programming called NLP, or natural language programming, natural language processing. But you, in your natural language, just tell it what you want. You have to be pretty specific, obviously, and you have to iterate on it. But so this looks pretty good. This agent now, if I just gave it the command, if an invoice were uploaded and I gave it the command to extract it, it would do an account check. It's identified the account, the invoice, 4 line items now instead of 3. Here's how it would do the matching. No match found, so it's going to create the account. It's going to insert the invoice. Well, this is interesting. It's going to do the invoice first with the account, and then it's going to come back and do the line items with the invoice ID. That's fine. That works. I mean, it's doing it in 3 steps instead of 2. And some final validation and a summary. And I could actually trigger any number of things. It could create a task for a human in the loop to come in and review the invoice. It could send a text message. It could update a back office system. So we can start chaining these and orchestrating them. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of wrap it up here. In the next video, we'll actually get into the automation. We'll do a record trigger flow with this agent. And as a file gets uploaded, that will trigger this agent that will go off, do all this DML, and run autonomously in the background. Okay, thanks a lot. See you soon.